Kunle was broke. Not just the kind of broke where you check your wallet and sigh, but the kind of broke where you begin to doubt if money ever truly existed in your life. For weeks, he had been struggling, eating bread and granuts, drinking sachet water, and dodging his landlord like a criminal on the run. But that Sunday afternoon, fate decided to play a cruel joke. As he stood at the bus stop, counting the only 500 naira left in his pocket, a woman appeared. Not just any woman, Amaka. She was tall, graceful, and beautiful in a way that made time slow down. Her yellow dress hugged her figure perfectly. Her skin glowed under the sun, and when she smiled at something on her phone, Kunle felt as though the universe had placed her there just to test him. At that moment, all sense of responsibility flew out of the window. He was supposed to guard that 500 naira with his life. It was his survivor money. But when his eyes met Amaka's, his brain started convincing him that 500 naira can always come back, but a woman like this may never appear again. Kunle took a deep breath, straightened his shirt, and walked up to her with the confidence of a man who owned half of Lagos. "Hello, beautiful," he said, his voice carrying that fake calmness men use when they are shaking inside. "Can I drop you off somewhere?" Amaka turned and looked at him. For a moment, she seemed uninterested, but then she noticed the way Kunle stood, pretending like he had everything under control. And then she saw something that sealed her curiosity, a key in his hand. Amaka thought, this one must have a car parked nearby. "I'm going to Ikeja," she said softly, with a little smile. Kunle almost choked. Ikeja? He didn't even have money to reach Yaba comfortably, but he forced a smile and replied, "Perfect, I'm heading that way too." So he waved his hand confidently as though signaling to a car and instead flagged down a tricycle. He quickly paid for both of them with his last 500 naira, leaving his pocket as empty as a politician's promise. Inside the tricycle, Kunle started forming big man. "You know," he said casually, "I just returned from Abuja yesterday. Contracts here, contracts there. Life of a hustler." Amaka smiled politely, nodding as though she believed him. She didn't know she was sitting beside a man who, at that very moment, had only lint and receipts in his pockets. When they finally got to Ikeja, Amaka suddenly said, "Actually, before I meet my friend, can we quickly stop at ShopRite? I need to pick up a few things." If Kunle's heart had been a drum, he would have burst. ShopRite. With 0 naira balance, this was no longer love at first sight. This was a death sentence. But pride is a wicked thing. Instead of confessing, Kunle forced a smile. "Of course, I also need to grab some things." And so, both of them walked into ShopRite together. Walking into ShopRite, Kunle felt like a man on death row. The cold air conditioning hit him, but it did not calm his nerves. His head was hot with the thought of how he would survive this performance. Amaka walked ahead confidently, swaying slightly as she pushed the cart. Kunle followed behind, hands in his pockets, pretending like he was relaxed when in reality, he was praying silently. "God, let this girl just pick bread and leave. Please don't let her eyes see expensive things." But God, it seemed, had other plans. Amaka picked up a tub of ice cream. Kunle's heart skipped. Okay, maybe it's small. But then she grabbed a bottle of juice. Kunle swallowed hard. Maybe just 2 things. Then she added biscuits, some toiletries, and a pack of spaghetti. By the time they got to the cashier, the bill flashed on the screen. 3,200 naira. It might as well have been 1,000,000. Kunle's account balance was 0 naira. His wallet was emptier than his future at that moment. "Sir, cash or card?" the cashier asked, chewing gum as she waited. Kunle felt the ground shift. His pride screamed at him not to embarrass himself. His stomach screamed at him to just run. But his mouth, the same mouth that brought him into this mess, whispered a lie. He leaned towards Amaka and said with fake calmness, "Babe, can you hold this one? My account officer mistakenly placed a limit on my card. I don't like stress." Amaka froze. She turned slowly to look at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Excuse me?" she asked. "You brought me here and you can't even pay 3,200 naira." Kunle tried to maintain his act.
It's not that I can't pay. It's just that Boamaka was already shaking her head. She dropped the items on the counter and walked out with dignity, her heels clicking like a gavel in a courtroom. The cashier raised her eyebrows at Kunle. Oga, you dey follow her? The people behind him in the queue were already laughing. One man muttered, "Now why I know they trust these Lagos big boys?" Kunle wanted the ground to swallow him. He nodded quickly, pretended as if he was following Amaka, and dashed out of ShopRite, empty-handed, humiliated, and with hunger gnawing his stomach. Outside, he scanned for Amaka. She was gone, completely disappeared into the crowd like smoke in the wind. For the first time that day, reality slapped Kunle hard. He had lost his last 500 naira. He had lost his pride. And worst of all, he had lost the chance with Amaka. Kunle walked out of ShopRite with his head down, his pride shattered into pieces. 500 naira, gone. Amaka, gone. Dignity, gone. He muttered to himself as he trudged towards the bus stop. The worst part? He didn't even have transport fare back home. The 500 naira he had used to impress Amaka had paid for their keke ride. He prayed maybe he'd find a forgotten 100 naira note in his pocket, but all he found was a crumpled receipt for Indomie he had bought 2 weeks ago. Just then, he heard a familiar voice behind him. Kunle, is that you? He turned. Standing there was Jide, his childhood friend. Ah, Jide, long time. Kunle forced a smile, trying to hide his embarrassment. But Jide was observant. One look at Kunle's sweaty face and nervous smile, and he knew something was wrong. Guy, you look like you've seen a ghost. What happened? Kunle hesitated, then sighed. My brother, it's a long story. Jide laughed. I have time. Tell me. Kunle reluctantly narrated the ShopRite disaster. By the time he was done, Jide was laughing so hard that people at the bus stop turned to look. So you used your last 500 naira to impress a girl you don't know? Jide asked between laughs. Ah, Kunle, you never change. Kunle frowned. It's not funny. I'm stranded here. Can you help me with transport fare? Jide shook his head in disbelief. My friend, you need to fix your priorities. You keep chasing appearances instead of facing reality. He gave Kunle 1,000 naira and said, go home, eat, rest, and for once in your life, think with your head, not your ego. Kunle muttered thanks and boarded a bus. But inside, he was already plotting. Instead of learning his lesson, he thought, I just need more money. If I can look the part, I'll get the girl. What Kunle didn't know was that this foolish mindset would drag him into situations far worse than a ShopRite embarrassment. Because when a man begins to chase pride with an empty pocket, he invites trouble that even prayer cannot easily remove.
When Kunle got home that evening, he lay on his bed staring at the ceiling. His landlord had already banged on his door earlier in the week demanding rent, and his phone buzzed with text messages from creditors. Yet, all Kunle could think about was Amaka's face, her beauty, her poise, and the way she vanished without a trace. Instead of reflecting on his mistakes, Kunle's mind was already scheming. If only I had money, real money, not this pocket change life, Amaka would never have walked away. Women only respect men who can spend. The next morning, Kunle dressed up in his best shirt, one that had been ironed so many times it was beginning to fade, and went to meet an old acquaintance, Chuka. Chuka was not exactly the kind of man a person went to for wise counsel. He was a smooth talker, always promising quick money through shady deals. If Lagos had a middle name, it would be Chuka. Kunle, my guy, Chuka greeted, slapping his back as they met at a roadside bar. You look hungry for business. What happened? Kunle told him the whole embarrassing story. By the time he finished, Chuka was laughing so hard his beer nearly spilled. Ah, Kunle, you are still chasing women with empty pockets. My brother, you need upgrade. Forget all this hustle and suffer lifestyle. You want women to respect you, you need to look rich, whether you are rich or not. Kunle leaned forward eagerly. How? Chuka smirked. Simple. Fake it. Rent a car for 1 weekend, dress sharp, carry small cash.
When you show up, Amaka and all her friends will bow. Kunle hesitated. But I don't even have money to rent a car. Chuka waved his hand. Leave that one to me. Just give me 10,000 naira and I'll arrange something for you. Kunle's heart sank. 10,000 naira? He barely had 100 naira to his name. But his seed had been planted. That night, as he lay on his bed, hunger biting his stomach, Kunle made a dangerous decision. He would borrow money. Not to pay his rent, not to eat, not to settle debts, but to chase Amaka again. The next day, he called his cousin, Tayo, who worked as a mechanic. Tayo had begged, can you help me with small 15,000 naira? Just for 1 week, I'll pay back double. Tayo was suspicious. Kunle, what are you planning? Every time I give you money, you waste it. Kunle lied smoothly. It's for a job interview. This one is serious. If I get it, our family will never suffer again. Reluctantly, Tayo sent the money. By the evening, Kunle handed 10,000 naira to Chuka, who arranged a battered Toyota Corolla and assured him, Oga, by tomorrow you go shine. Kunle didn't see it coming, but he was digging himself into a hole so deep, even love would not save him. By Saturday morning, Kunle stood in front of his one-room apartment, staring proudly at the dusty Toyota Corolla Chuka had brought for him. In his eyes, it wasn't just a Corolla, it was a private jet. He polished the car with his old t-shirt until it gleamed, then took a few selfies with it. He uploaded one on WhatsApp with the caption, Weekend vibes, Abuja contracts paying off, soft life. Within minutes, his phone buzzed with messages. Old classmates were asking, Kunle, you blow? Struggling neighbors were nodding in envy. But the only notification Kunle cared about was the one from Amaka. She viewed his status. That was enough fuel for Kunle's confidence. He dialed her number. Hello, Amaka. It's Kunle. I was just thinking, maybe I can pick you up today. Let's have lunch. There was a long pause. Then Amaka's voice came, cool and careful. Kunle the Abuja contractor. Okay, why not? Come pick me up. Kunle's heart leaped. He jumped into the Corolla like a man boarding a chariot to destiny. When he arrived at Amaka's compound, she stepped out wearing a red dress that made heads turn. Neighbors watched curiously as she slid into the passenger seat of his borrowed chariot. Kunle grinned, proud that for once in his life, he looked like the man he always pretended to be. Where should we go? Kunle asked, trying to keep his voice calm. Let's go to the Palms, Amaka said, without hesitation. I've been craving something nice. Kunle nearly slammed the brakes. The Palms, that wasn't ShopRite level spending anymore. That was fine dining, where even bottled water cost as much as his last week's food budget. But pride is a stubborn master. Instead of saying no, Kunle smiled. Perfect choice. At the Palms, Kunle led her to a table like a man who had eaten there 100 times. Amaka ordered confidently. Chicken, rice, a drink, and dessert. Kunle, worried about the bill, chose the cheapest item on the menu, bottled water. When the food arrived, Amaka ate slowly, asking questions about his contracts. So, Kunle, what exactly did you do in Abuja? Kunle wiped imaginary sweat from his forehead. I work with the government projects, big tenders, oil, gas, the usual. Amaka raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. The bill came, 12,800 naira. Kunle almost fainted. He only had 5,000 naira left from the money his cousin had lent him. But he couldn't expose himself. He excused himself, went outside, and quickly dialed Chuka. Guy, I'm finished. The bill is 12,800 naira, and I only have 5,000 left. Chuka laughed on the phone. You dey craze. No worry, I dey come. 15 minutes later, Chuka strolled in pretending to be Kunle's business partner. With exaggerated flair, he slapped 15,000 naira cash on the counter. Kunle, abeg, no forget our meeting in Abuja next week, oh, he said loudly, winking as Amaka watched. Kunle forced a smile, his pride rescued for the moment. Amaka looked impressed. Wow, you really are connected. Kunle felt on top of the world. For the first time, it seemed like his gamble was working. But what he didn't know was that this illusion would soon collapse in the most humiliating way possible. It all started on a quiet Tuesday. Amaka called Kunle out of the blue. Kunle, I'm around the Keja Mall. Come pick me. Let's chill. Kunle panicked. The Corolla wasn't with him. It was parked at Chuka's mechanic for servicing. But his pride wouldn't let him say no. Of course, baby, he said with forced calm. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Click. Kunle's mind raced. He had no money for Uber, no car at hand. In desperation, he borrowed a friend's Okada to rush to the mall, hoping Amaka wouldn't notice. But as fate would have it, the moment he arrived, Amaka was standing outside the mall with her girlfriends. And there he was, Kunle the Abuja contractor, jumping down from the back of an Okada like a delivery boy. The silence was deafening. Her friends burst into laughter. One of them whispered loudly, "Now this one they claim oil and gas?" Kunle forced a smile, his heart pounding like a talking drum. "Ah, traffic, I had to improvise." But Amaka's face told another story. Her eyes had narrowed and suspicion was spreading. Still, she agreed to sit with him inside the mall. Kunle tried to save face, talking big about his next trip to Abuja. But then disaster struck again. While they were eating, Chuka walked in. And not just Chuka. Chuka walked in with Kunle's landlord, Mr. Adebayo. Chuka spotted Kunle and shouted across the hall, "Kunle, guy, how far? You never still pay that house rental. Your landlord, they find you." The entire food court froze. Amaka dropped her fork. "Wait, what?" Kunle stammered. "Ah, no, it's not like that. Small misunderstanding." But Mr. Adebayo stepped forward, glaring. "Misunderstanding? Kunle, you owe 6 months' rent. You even borrowed my generator last week and never returned it." Gasps filled the room. Amaka's friends started recording with their phones. Kunle wished the ground would open and swallow him. His carefully built illusion was collapsing brick by brick. The Abuja contractor had been exposed as nothing more than a struggling tenant with borrowed pride. Amaka stood up slowly, her voice calm but sharp like a knife. "So, this is the big man I've been talking to. A liar, a pretender. Kunle, you embarrassed yourself, not me." And with that, she walked away, her friends trailing behind, still laughing. Kunle sat frozen, sweat dripping down his face as the whispers around the mall grew louder and louder. For the first time, Kunle realized that living a borrowed life comes with a price, and he was about to pay it in full.
By the next morning, Kunle's disgrace was no longer just a scene at the mall. It had become breaking news in his neighborhood. Somebody had uploaded the video of him being confronted by his landlord, and within hours, it spread through WhatsApp groups like wildfire. The caption read, "Abuja contractor exposed. Man owing rent pretends to be big man in front of girlfriend." Kunle couldn't step outside without hearing laughter or whispers. Children in the compound started chanting a new song. "Contractor without contract. Abuja without ticket. Obo without contract. Abuja without ticket. Obo without contract." The humiliation cut deep. Every time he tried to defend himself, people only laughed harder. Even his landlady's dog barked at him with what felt like mockery. One afternoon, as Kunle walked to the kiosk to buy bread, a neighbor called out, "Kunle, how market for Abuja?" The entire street roared with laughter. He didn't stop there. Amaka blocked him on all platforms, but her friends continued to post sarcastic status updates. Ladies beware of men who polish borrowed Corolla and call themselves oil tycoons. Each update stabbed Kunle like a dagger. Even his cousin Chuka, who had been his partner in deceit, scolded him. "Guy, I tell you say small packaging no bad, but you overdo. Now see as they've done disgrace you. You not just fall, you carry me follow." Kunle snapped. "Now you bring that useless Corolla." But Chuka only laughed bitterly.
At least, na my Corolla, your mom na bicycle of lies. Kunle sank deeper into shame. The worst blow came when Mr. Ade, the landlord, pasted a notice on Kunle's door. Tenants must pay 6 months arrears or vacate within 14 days. People passing by stopped to read it and shake their heads, as though Kunle's life was now a public display of failure. Kunle lay on his bed that night, staring at the ceiling fan turning slowly above him. For the first time in his adult life, he admitted the truth to himself. His hunger for pride had ruined him. He remembered the moment he had spent his last 500 naira on that coffin stunt. That single decision had led him here, mocked, broke, and abandoned. And yet, life wasn't done teaching him lessons, because the final humiliation was still on the way. 2 weeks later, the deadline from the landlord expired. Kunle hadn't paid a kobo. True to his word, Mr. Ade arrived with 2 men and threw Kunle's belongings outside. It was a pitiful sight. Kunle's mattress, his few shirts, his rusted pots, and even his framed picture from university graduation, all dumped by the roadside. Neighbors gathered as though it was a festival. Some whispered, others laughed openly. Na contractor be this? See Abuja tycoon with nylon bag. Kuni didn't argue. He sat quietly on the pavement, his face in his hands, wishing he could disappear. As if fate wanted to press salt into his wounds, Amaka passed by in an Uber. She glanced through the window, saw him sitting by his scattered belongings, and shook her head. There was no anger in her eyes anymore, just pity. That pity hurt more than all the mockery. Later that evening, Chuka found him sitting alone by the roadside. Chuka said, Konle, life don't humble you, Ebi. Konle sighed. Chuka, I don't even know who I am anymore. I've been pretending so long that I forgot myself. All for what? To impress a woman? Chuka nodded slowly. See, guy, women will come and go, but dignity, if you lose them, now you go suffer pass. You define respect through lies, but the only respect wey last na the one where you build with your own sweat. Kunle kept quiet. For once, his cousin's words sank deep. The next morning, Kunle swallowed his pride and went to meet Mr. Ade, the landlord. He apologized sincerely and begged for just 1 month to find another place. Mr. Ade, seeing that Kunle had finally dropped his arrogance, agreed. Then Kunle made a decision that shocked everyone who knew him. He went back to his old university lecturer and asked for help finding a small teaching job. Anything, sir, he said. I just want honest work. No more packaging, no more lies. For the first time in years, Kunle meant it. It wasn't glamorous, but soon he was earning enough to feed himself and save a little. Slowly, people's laughter died down. They began to respect him again, not because of fake cars or fake contracts, but because he was finally living with truth. And whenever he walked past the street where the children used to chant about Abuja contractor, they now greeted him with a simple, respectful, "Good afternoon, Uncle Kunle." That was more valuable than all the fake glory he once chased. Kunle's story became a quiet reminder in the community. Don't carry the coffin of pride because you might just bury yourself in it.